Hello, welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making Southern fried chicken tenders and biscuits. Alright, we're going to start out with the chicken, and what you're going to need for a chicken breast. You're going to take and cut off any fat that is on there or any pieces that need to be removed, and then cut them into tender pieces, which basically is just slicing it into pieces. Once you have all your tenders cut, you're going to put them in a decent sized bowl, which you're going to add buttermilk enough to coat. Once you get it in there, you want to stir it around to make sure the buttermilk gets onto all the pieces front and back, so that way when you go to add your breading to it, it will stick to all parts of the chicken. Now in another bowl, you are going to add 1 cup of flour, 2 tablespoons of chicken seasoning, 1 tablespoon of garlic pepper seasoning, 1 tablespoon of paprika, 1 tablespoon of cayenne pepper, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And then you're going to add a 1/3 cup of Italian breadcrumbs. Now you want to mix this thoroughly so all your seasoning goes through all of the mix, because you really don't want to have too much of one thing on any part of your chicken. And once you've got it completely mixed through, you're going to want to take your tenders and make sure they still have buttermilk on them and go through one piece at a time, dumping it into your mixture to coat it. You're going to get quite a few pieces of chicken out of this. The best thing is if you have too much for you or whoever you're eating with, you can always warm these up the next day. They're not bad to warm up. Just make sure as you're doing this that you coat all sides of your chicken and that nothing is left exposed. Just a side note, as you're mixing up stuff and you're using tongs like I'm using right now, make sure that when you get to the cooking phase, you do not continue to use the same utensils, because that's cross-contamination and you can make someone sick or make yourself sick. So if you have time in between, like I did, I will wash everything I use so that way I can come back and just use it again, but clean. Or get something different to use. It's just not worth risking making someone sick. So as you can see from the video, there are a lot of pieces of chicken here. So if you're going to go and make this in your skillet and you have a medium to a large one, you probably are not going to be able to fit these all in. So you're going to have to do 2 runs of cooking, which is perfectly fine. So once you have everything moved out of the way and you get your pan ready, you want to cover the bottom with a very decent amount of oil. You want to make sure that there is a layer that coats the whole bottom plus a little extra. Then go ahead after the oil is warmed up and start putting your chicken in. You should see it start to sizzle after a few minutes, and that's perfectly fine. You don't want to put it in when your oil is too cold, because that way your flour, seasoning, and everything might just start to come off in the oil. The warmer the oil to hot, the better, because that way it's going to start to sear it into place as you put the chicken in. The whole goal here is to turn your chicken regularly and cook it until you get a very good golden brown look on the outside of it. And as you go, you will definitely see the change. One way you can test to see if you're done towards the end is you can actually cut one of these open and make sure it's not pink inside. You do not want pink. Or you can test it with a thermometer if you choose. That's all on you. But as I said, just make sure you turn them regularly so they don't stick, and that way you don't have a problem. Because not everybody has a non-stick pan. I think they're a godsend. You really need one. And here you have what your chicken should look like when you are about done. So once you take these out of your pan, you can get ready for your next batch, because if you have as many left over as I had, you will be doing 2 pans of chicken. And when you're done, you get something that looks a lot like this. So that's your chicken part done. So now we're going for the biscuits. So you're going to have a large bowl with 2 cups of flour in it. To this, you're adding 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of sugar, a 1/4 cup of shortening. You could either mix up your stuff and put the shortening in, or put the shortening in and wait to mix the whole thing together. It's your choice. And to this, you're going to add 1 stick of butter. Basically chop that butter up into pieces. It's easier to mix through. It just works so much better. Now, as you go through, the whole goal is to get the butter down to the size of a grain of rice. You can't always get it that small, but if you keep working it, you will. The whole thing is to kind of keep the butter the way it is cold, and not work it too much where it gets hot and melty and that. Just keep going, work yourself in from the sides to the center of the bowl until you break it up. You're mixing in everything at this point, including the seasonings and the shortening. You're trying to get everything mixed through to where there is no large clumps of anything. Smaller ones are fine, because when you bake it, that will make your biscuits more flaky. As you go around your bowl, make sure that you scrape in the sides and get everything that's stuck to the side of the bowl in the center, so that way it's easier to mix through. The more flour you have in the center, the easier it is to break up the butter. Now, once you got it really mixed through, you're going to start adding your buttermilk. I would say to use half of the buttermilk at a time. It's just easier to mix in, because once you get it all starting to clump together, then bring in the rest of the buttermilk. Now, if you pour in what's left that you had out of your 2 cups of buttermilk, or excuse me, a cup of buttermilk or whatever was left, you might need to go more. You need to increase it if it's too dry. You want this to stick together and be a little wet, but not too wet. So it could be you've added as much as a cup to, I don't know, 1.25 cup and a half of buttermilk, depending on how much you have in here that isn't sticking together properly. You just add it a little at a time till you get it there. Now, when I go to mix up my biscuits, I actually take a cutting board, put flour on it, and then pull out a decent amount each time and fold it over till I use my cutter to make the biscuit, because it's easier than pulling out the whole bowl and trying to do it all at once. Cut these, sit them to the side until you're ready to pan them up to put them in the oven. You need to preheat your oven to at least 425 to 450, because these will be baking for at least 20 to 25 minutes. You want that oven hot before you put them in, because you do want to try to brown the top a little bit. So what you're going to do is just keep going through what you have in your bowl until you've actually made up all the biscuits. And you may have a little left over. I always do. I just shape that into a biscuit and stick it on as well. Just make sure as you're doing this, you are folding it over to where you have layers in there. That's going to help you have flaky biscuits. When you are patting these down, you don't want them flat. You want to have them at least a half an inch or so higher, so that way when they bake up they get some height. Now mind you, when you put them in the pan, when you put them side by side, they're going to push themselves up when they bake anyway to give them height. If you find that some of the dough is a little sticky and you're having trouble handling it, put flour on your hands, put flour on top of the dough itself, because they will get sticky if they don't have enough flour on them. Now when you're trying to put them in the pan, you need to take, I use a cake pan, like 8-inch, 9-inch, line it with foil, spray it with nonstick cooking spray, and then literally put them into the pan one at a time, trying to keep them touching. If you're putting them in, you notice there's some space between, like I just did, just push them together. They'll slide on the cooking spray. And if you don't have enough room in one, find another pan. And this is what they look like when they're done, when they come out of the oven. They're flaky, they're browned on top, but they are great biscuits and ready for your whole meal. And the best thing about chicken and biscuits is it's very southern, but it's very good. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Have a great day.